Good morning, everyone. I'm not sure if you can hear me well or see me, actually. Is my sound okay? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see
you. Okay, thank you very much. So it is my great pleasure to be with you this morning. I have to say that I've did my best to join in person, but unfortunately there was a very long week with a lot of commitments. And actually, let me just say that one of the reasons I was not able to attend was actually because I just hosted the training school of the cost on sexual medicine at Porto University. So we actually were very pleased to welcome 12 PhD students and young researchers from all over Europe, and a number of colleagues who participated in the training school, and that all of that was thanks to the cost action. And let me just start by congratulating Marianne, and not only congratulating, but thank her for all that she's doing on this cost, all that was possible. Not only the training school, this fantastic event, which I regret not to be there. Let me also say that I think it is very important the partnership between the researchers, practitioners on the field of sexual health and sexual rights, and policymakers. I think the link is very important, and it was very good to see the presentation by Dr. Gudrun, and a willingness also to recognize and be aware of the importance of sexual health and rights for the well-being and quality of life of all. I'm going now to share my slides. Let's see if this works. Can you still hear me? I don't see anyone. I actually saw some of good friends and colleagues there, so I'm very pleased to see your faces after so many months and years of confinements. But let me see if I can share my slides. So, okay. Just please let me know if you are seeing the slides.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. So what I will briefly present with you, I know we are already a bit late, it's the importance of evidence-based knowledge and its translation into global policies that promote sexual health and rights. And I'll talk about the World Association for Sexual Health, which I was president for 4 years. So I just my term actually was concluded a month ago. So I'm still feeling into the job, let's put it this way. But once we work at the World Association for Sexual Health, we never took out the clothes. So it's very important contribution to well-being and promotion of sexual health and rights. But I will also talk a little bit about the importance of one particular initiative, which is a key initiative of WAS, which is the World Sexual Health Day. But let me start you by a broader perspective on global actions to promote sexual health and rights around the world. And historically, I need to start by the International Conference on Population Development. This was 27 years ago, actually, Cairo in 1994. Recently in Nairobi, 2 years ago, they were celebrating the 25 years of this very important international conferences. And why this conference was important was that for the first time, there was an agreement between governments from around the world in order to recognize the importance of sexual and reproductive rights and health throughout the world. And there were a number of measures or goals that were established and agreed by governments around the world that should be achieved. I was fortunate to be in Nairobi for the ICPD 25 2 years ago, and I learned a lot about the importance of translating what we know, knowledge about evidence-based knowledge about sexual health and rights into policies that advance sexual health and rights. This is never an easy task. I can tell you some examples of the difficulties to translate these when we want to influence public policies and policymakers. But my message is that it is important, it is central that we do not stop discussing these topics with policymakers, regardless of their point of view. The other very major aspect that I want to share is the UN Sustainable Development Goals that most of you are aware of, the 2030 UN SDGs. And among those SDGs, there are at least two that are very, very connected with sexual health and rights. And one of these is SDG 3, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being, and our specific topics related to sexual and reproductive rights on this specific SDG. The other important SDG is SDG 5, achieve gender equality. Again, gender equality is strongly connected with sexual health, sexual rights, and reproductive rights. And there's a number of specific goals that were established, which are linked with our field. And so just to say that from the point of view of the United Nations and the goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, a number of those goals are actually very, very related to what we are talking today. And finally, one more recent example is WHO. WHO developed a framework for sexual health, including several aspects of reproductive health and sexual health and sexual rights. And it's very interesting because I had the opportunity actually to have Jan Askew, the director of the sexual and reproductive health at WHO, just 2 days ago at our seminar right after the cost training at Porto University. And it is very interesting to see that WHO is now moving into the direction of trying to include more positive aspects about sexuality into their agenda. Of course, WHO is historically more focused on how to prevent STIs, HIV/AIDS, how to prevent unwanted pregnancies, sexual violence, etc., etc., etc. But it's also very important to start focusing and connecting with the positive aspects of sexuality and sexual well-being and the importance of promoting those positive aspects in order to promote better global well-being, actually also better global health and also human rights. So I think this is also a changing pattern at the WHO, which is very important to emphasize. These are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Again, you can see some of them, particularly number 3, good health, and number 5, gender equality, which are very aligned. But some others are also have connections with sexual health and sexual rights anyway. Let me also share with you a definition of sexual health. This definition is not new, actually. The first definition was in 2002. This is WHO definition. And actually, the World Association for Sexual Health played a very important role because many members of the WAS were involved on the team that developed this definition. I just wanted to share the most important aspects of this definition. As you can see, sexual health is a state of physical, emotional, mental, and social well-being in relation to sexuality. So this is a broader concept than just merely the absence of disease, dysfunction, or infirmity. So this is actually in the definition, sexual health requires a positive and respectful approach to sexuality and sexual relationships, as well as the possibility, and here is important to emphasize, possibility of having pleasurable and safe sexual experiences. So the word possibility, the word pleasure is there since the beginning, since 2002, which is also important, the positive aspect of sexual health. Safe sexual experiences, and of course, free of coercion, discrimination, and violence. So as you can see, this is a broader definition, and sexual health is not merely the absence of infirmity, disease, or dysfunctions, but it's much more than just that. I wanted to talk a bit about the World Association for Sexual Health because it is important to be aware of the work that this association is been doing actually to promote sexual health and sexual rights for all. And I would say that having been the privilege of being present for the last 4 years of this association, I think what is unique on actually on the World Association for Sexual Health is not only its multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary nature, but the fact that its main goal, it's not only to do research or promote the profession, it's much more than that. It's trying to promote actually sexual health throughout the human lifespans all over the world by developing, promoting, and supporting sexual health and sexual rights for all. So as you can see, the aim in the mission statement is very ambitious and very broad. So it's not just only, you know, promoting the profession, bringing awareness about the importance of sexuality and sexual health, and also incentiving research and evidence based on these topics, which is fundamentally important. But it's more than that. How can we translate all of that into public policies that really make a difference in promoting health and rights throughout the world and throughout the lifespan? So again, a very, very ambitious mission. And as this mission is very ambitious, it can only be accomplished, or at least we can only try to make it work or move forward this agenda if we work in partnership with other local organizations or globally, internationally with global organizations. And so was as a very strong partnership with several global organizations, WHO, UN organizations, especially UNFPA, but also IPPF, UNESCO, UNAIDS, and others. So this partnership alliance is also very important if you want to move forward with our mission. I also want to briefly share with you some of the main initiatives that has been developed during the last, I would say, 20 years or more. And I'm starting with the more recent ones, the ones in the last 12, 13 years. But at the beginning of, at the change of the millennium, actually the World Association for Sexual Health changed its names from the World Association of Sexology into the World Association of Sexual Health. And back then, there was an important guideline on sexual health for the millennium, a technical document, which framed this important change in the direction of promoting not health, but not only health and sexual health, also sexual rights. So the interconnection between sexual health and sexual rights were always at the core of WAS aim. One very key, I would say, one landmark of WAS is the Declaration of Sexual Rights. This declaration was first developed in 2009, but in 2014, there's the new declaration. And as you can see, a number of aspects on this declaration are very, very connected with human rights. Actually, each of these sexual rights have a strong connection with specific human rights. So the sexual rights are universally acknowledged human rights that are related to sexuality. And so this is, again, important because many of the human rights overall have connections with also sexual rights in itself. The full field is another very interesting example. We did this in partnership with IPPF in 2016. This was a technical guidance to focusing on the importance of sexual rights of young people, So all the sexual rights overall pertain to young people's lives, and how can we implement those sexual rights in this younger population? More recently, actually, was also a very important role in the new WHO ICD-11. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with this, but ICD-11 was again an important landmark in changing, for the first time, creating a chapter on conditions related to sexual health. Sexual health topics were mostly into mental health chapters, both in ICD and actually at the DSM. But this ICD-11 edition, what it made was to create a new chapter specific dedicated to conditions related to sexual health. And this is important for many reasons. First reason is bring a bigger awareness of the importance of sexual health. There's a specific chapter on that. The second main reason is that for many, and particularly for the gender diverse populations and persons, the change from mental health, from framing into a mental health domain into a sexual health domain makes a huge difference in terms of depathologizing suffering from incongruence between your own body and your gender identity. So that was important for many reasons, and it's a huge transformation thanks to WHO, where was also a very important impact and contribution. More recently, while I was already president of WAS, we developed a sexual pleasure declaration. And this was, I think, a turning point, because despite the fact that pleasure was already on the definition of sexual health, pleasure is usually not the main focus of sexual health and rights. But in fact, pleasure is at the core of sexuality, at the core of everything related to sexual health and sexual rights. We all know that probably 99% or even more of the sexual experiences, the main reason for that, or one of the main reasons for everyone to involve in sexual activities, in experiences, is because of pleasure and sexual pleasure. And so not recognizing this is, of course, something that not only creates damage to people, but the recognition of the right of everyone to have pleasurable sexual activity and experiences is key for the freedom, I would say, of many. But this is, of course, a controversial topic. Let me just say that when we include sexual pleasure into the agenda of WAS, many, and particularly many were saying that, okay, of course, sexual pleasure is important. But there's a lot of other more important or more urgent aspects related to sexual rights that we should be looking for. Of course, sexual violence. Of course, there's a number of sexual discrimination. There's a number of very unequal and very strong aspects that are related to sexual rights that were not attained. So why should you focus on pleasure? But interestingly, pleasure is related to all of those aspects in a way. And when we went we were at the African Congress with not only colleagues, but young populations and advocates for organizations advocating for sexual rights and health in Africa. And we discussed the sexual pleasure declaration. And it was very interesting that the most important aspect that they saw in the sexual rights and the one that they were more willing to invest and discuss was actually sexual pleasure. So sexual pleasure means a lot to all of us, including in countries where even other rights that might be more urgent and problematic are still not attained. And linked to this, I want also to talk to you about the World Sexual Health Day. This is a very important initiative that started in 2010, so it is now in its 11th year. And the initiative was, of course, the initiative started with WAS, but we called on all organizations to celebrate every 4th of September, each year, the World Sexual Health Day. And the goal was actually to bring awareness and promote greater social awareness of sexual health and sexual rights throughout the world. So mostly a day, and some of our colleagues used just a week or even a month, September, as the day, the week, or the month to celebrate the importance of sexual health and sexual rights. Each year there's a different topic. But this has been a very challenging, but also very interesting experience, because we are now again in its 11th edition. And for the first time, this day was recognized nationally by one parliament. It was actually the Portuguese parliament. And I'm very pleased that this was possible in my home country. But this was only possible because the work of many. So it's not just something that we can advocate or work for it in 1 or 2 years. This is a job of almost a generation. At least 10 years ago, we start negotiating and start putting into the agenda the importance of this day. And I have to acknowledge actually the work of Patricia Pascoal, who's there actually introducing me, and she could actually add more about this journey. Because she's still president of the Portuguese Society for Clinical Sexology. And this was a very strong teamwork, I would say, where others were also involved. And of course, the relationship with policymakers was very, very, very important. So Martha Crawford, a colleague of ours, was the lead of the National Day in Portugal and played also a fundamental role here. So the message here is that it is very, very important to negotiate, to partner with policymakers. This is not an easy road. This takes time, but it compensates, because what we have now in Portugal is a recognized formal National Health Day, Sexual Health Day every 4th of September. This is actually a picture of the moment where the Parliament voted. And the other good thing about this, which was actually unexpected, is that it is voted unanimously. So the approval was unanimously by the Portuguese Parliament, which was actually quite unexpected, surprising, and a very positive message also to others. And I hope this will actually will be followed by other countries and ultimately the United Nations. So our goal will be to engage with others. There's a number of other countries. We have a long tradition in celebrating these days. I heard yesterday from UK, I was in a session with the UK Foreign Office on actually the importance of sexual pleasure. And I was told that probably UK will follow Portugal on this. And so this is a very, very important message also for the future. This will bring awareness. This will bring the recognition from governments and also hopefully at the UN. I'm not sure how I am with time. I still wanted to share a few more ideas. Let me just say that, can someone tell me how much time do I still have? Yes?
Pedro, you have 3 to 5 minutes sharp.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Patricia. So I'll try to make it shorter now. Just want to share a new WAS initiative, which is the Sexual Justice Initiative. This is, of course, very linked with sexual rights, but it is in a broader perspective in a way. This is an initiative that started actually recently, last year. We were debating this, discussing this at the World Association Congress last month in South Africa. It's also important that this was the first World Conference of WAS in Africa. So Africa is much more involved, which is also very important. And I want to actually conclude by sharing a new project which is linked with what we call the World Observatory on Sexual Health and Sexual Rights. And this is linked with the need for evidence-based knowledge. There's other initiatives that are recent. For instance, WHO has launched an initiative on a global survey on sexual health. WAS is also linked with this initiative, but the idea of WHO is actually to create a survey that can be used by all countries worldwide. So in order to make it possible to have comparable data. What is important here is that unfortunately, many of the surveys on sexual health and sexual rights are conducted in the global north. There's few in the global south. So having a global measure is a very important first step for that to occur. Also briefly to share that there's an initiative, which is the iShare initiative. Many of you may be aware of this. This was an initiative that started, I would say, kind of a snowball right after the COVID. And the idea was to contribute to a better understanding of the impact of COVID-19 on sexual and reproductive health. The very good news about this is this was possible to make it work in very, very short time period, and including a number of different countries, not only from the global north, but also from the global south. As you can see, the blue countries there, of course, there's many. The North America, Europe is very well represented, but you can still see many countries in Latin America, in Africa, and also in Asia that aligned with this. So the good news is that we have capacity in many countries. We have leaders there, researchers that can launch initiatives like this. The main issue here is that, of course, we are not talking about representative samples. We're talking about convenient samples, which means that, of course, we need funding in order to do differently. So the World Observatory on Sexual Health is actually aiming at that, on promoting sexual health throughout the world, and the advocacy for sexual health should be strongly supported by evidence-based knowledge. This is, of course, the assumption. But what we know, despite some accumulated knowledge, and most of this accumulated knowledge is on sex and reproductive health, HIV and AIDS, but we have less information on sexual well-being, satisfaction, pleasure, sexual rights, and sexual justice. And actually, most of this, again, that we know is from the global north, and less is known by the global south, particularly relating to these more positive aspects of sexuality. So the goal of this project is collect existing data, and not only collect existing data, but more importantly, implement comparable studies on a variety of these dimensions, particularly the ones who are less studied across different countries worldwide. Some of the topics that are tentative topics: gender and sexuality, HIV, STI, AIDS, reproductive health, sexual aggression, sexual behavior, sexual problems, sexual rights and sexual justice, sexual satisfaction, pleasure and well-being, and sexuality education. The main reasons for, of course, this project is that we need evidence-based on the state of art of these dimensions. And if we have this evidence-based, this will increase awareness about, of course, the important role of sexual health in global health and well-being. And we'll also increase awareness about diversity and the sexual diversity, and the need to develop global programs to promote health and rights, and inform ultimately, and that is the ultimate goal, so we can inform evidence-based interventions and policies to promote sexual health and sexual rights. So in a word, we will be stronger in advocating and influencing public policies if we have strong evidence base, if that evidence base is not only focused on the rich North countries, but is worldwide, global. Some of the main gaps I already mentioned, but sexual attitudes, beliefs, and its relation with sexual health, it's less known, particularly in the global south. the relationship, and this is key, between sexual health, global health, and well-being, although there are studies that show this, this is not studied in the global south. Sexual dissatisfaction and sexual pleasure are understudied, at least in this global service, and also sexual justice and sexual rights. And again, the global south is less studied, and also there are a number of specific populations that are understudied, aging populations. Although there are a number of studies lately on aging populations, they are mostly, again, from global north, not from global south, less educated people, and marginalized groups. And so, to conclude, in order to do all of this, we definitely need to build partnerships. This is very ambitious projects. This will need a lot of funding, not only a lot of capacity building, finding the leaders in the specific countries, but then being able to have funding to do it correctly and to have representative samples that will make the findings more robust. To finalize, I will just wanted to share with you our doctoral program in human sexuality. I won't take more than 30 seconds just to say our doctoral program was actually hosting the COST training session. This was an incredible journey in the last 3 days this week. That's why, again, I was not able to join you there. But I think this is the kind of partnerships that we should continue doing. Young researchers, PhD students are the ones who are moving the agenda forward, particularly regarding evidence-based knowledge on these very important aspects. And we need not only to welcome them, but to nurture them for the future. And I will end up by saying that we also have a lab in Portugal, and we will welcome anyone who's willing to partner with us at Porto University. Thank you very much for your attention.